What's up, guys? Today on Fishy Talks, we're going to be talking about DreamHack Vegas. Now, Vegas to me is exciting because we get to see a lot of the newer rosters. After the major, there was a lot of roster changes, and now we get to see a lot of them, aside from the French teams. Not only that, but DreamHack in itself, they're a pretty big event organizer, high production value, and it's in Vegas. Who doesn't want to see some Counter-Strike played in the MGM Grand? We finally get to see Optic playing with Hiko, we get to see SK with Phelps, we get to see NIP on LAN, and they've been playing bad online. Maybe they can switch it around on LAN, maybe they're going to pull a VP on us. We get to see North with AZ, we get to see FaZe with a stand-in, Jacom, who we haven't seen play at a pro level in a while. We get to see Complexity, Misfits, teams and players we haven't seen play on LAN in forever, especially of this caliber. And finally, every single team at this event has something to prove following the major, and it's super exciting to finally see these rosters play it out, duke it out on these maps. And something else, we can see the new Inferno. That's something exciting, right? See how pros do it. So without further ado, let's just hop right into it. I'm going to be breaking down the groups, how they played out, my opinions, that kind of stuff, and then from there we're going to head into my playoff predictions and who I think is going to win the quarters, semis, and of course the grand final. So let's hop right into it. All right, so let's first talk about Group A. Group A consisted of Astralis, North, Optic, and Complexity. Now, right off the bat, one of these teams doesn't belong, and it's pretty obvious. That team's Complexity, and unfortunately, they're just not cut, especially for a group like this. You have Astralis, Optic, who's probably arguably one of the best North American teams, at least leading into the major. Right now, who knows, because they all kind of blow. Then you got North, who's like one of the top 5 teams in the world, and they just got a new player who's crazy good. So, you know, between Astralis, North, and Optic, when you have Complexity, this is their group of death. They're fucked. There's no way they make it out of this group. The other North American team in this group, Optic. Now, Optic won E-League, which is a huge win. They had lots of momentum going into the major. They had lots of big performances. But what ended up happening at the major was kind of a stumble. You got to imagine that they seriously underperformed. There was lots of talks. Like, if you guys watch any of the Optic Vision podcasts, apparently they had lots of struggles with Mixwell's visa. They had like just barely a couple days of practice for the major, when most teams boot camp for 2-3 weeks leading into the major, sometimes a month or more. They seemed unprepared, they stumbled, they fell, and quickly following the major, they lost their in-game leader Stanislaw. And Stanislaw is the type of in-game leader where you could feel his impact on the team. Optic went from just a run and gun North American team to a team with some serious teamwork, some serious strats. And for them to suddenly lose Stanislaw and then have to go into this event with NAF in-game leading, you got to imagine they're not in a good spot. But let's take a moment away from the NA teams. Who's going to win this group? Obviously Astralis. Astralis, they're coming off the major, winning the major against VP. For the first time, they're bringing home a major championship to Denmark, for their team, especially with all the history of choking everything that they had. It was a huge win for them. And since then, they've been playing lights out. This team has been playing nuts. They're destined for this 2-0 victory in this group. So that leaves the major storyline being North versus Optic. Complexity, they're destined for the 0-2 loss. They're going home. In fact, they had the worst performance out of any team at this major. Like, it was bad. So we're not even going to dwell on it. They played bad. But again, they're just like a premier, barely pro level NA team. So let's be realistic about it. No one expected them to do work. The real storyline, like I said, is North versus Optic. This is going to be the game that's really going to be good, in my opinion. Both are coming in with new players, and it's going to be a show. So heading into the decider match, who's going on? This is the elimination match, North versus Optic. Who is going to win? And the answer was really clear. Once the game started to get played, North bodied Optic. Map 1 was a 16-2 on Nuke. Not really much you can say about that. Map 2 was a little bit closer. They picked up 6 rounds on their CT side, which is respectable. It's not amazing, but it's respectable. 9-6 scoreline's not that bad, especially CT side of Cobble. But after losing Pistol and some retakes, they picked up, I think, 1 round and then ended up just getting swept to the side. North just bodied Optic, and it was kind of a sad sight, but it was pretty clear from the start who the winners of this group was going to be. And first one, obviously Stralis, and number 2 was probably going to be North. Let's just be realistic, and they delivered, and it was an awesome group. So now we head into Group B. Group B is a little weird, at least in terms of results. So you've got VP, Fnatic, Gambit, and Misfits. Now, obviously, once again, one of these teams doesn't belong, and that's Misfits. Again, similar to Complexity, they're a good like premier, high premier level, low pro NA team. They're good, maybe a good NA pro upset team, but they're not really a serious team that's going to beat out the likes of VP, Fnatic, Gambit even. They're just kind of there, right? So when you're looking at this group, the obvious winners are going to be VP, right? I mean, you just imagine VP after making it to the final and having the lineup that they do, that they're going to just sweep this group. And next to them, the decider is going to be Gambit, Fnatic. Oddly enough, in this group, Gambit end up actually winning this group. Gambit goes 2-0. Now, Gambit's a team that's on the rise. Under Zeus's leadership, Gambit's been playing lights out. It seems like they've got a really good mix of older, experienced players and new up-and-coming stars, and they're just killing it right now. So they win this group, which is a little bit of a surprise. Most people would have thought it came down Fnatic Gambit series for elimination, but it ended up being VP Fnatic, which is kind of weird. And another kind of surprise about this group is that Misfits actually didn't play too bad. Misfits still lost, obviously, but they only went -11 rounds on their differential versus VP and Fnatic in 2BL1. So they didn't play too bad, to be honest. They played a lot better than most teams would have imagined. So now we get to the elimination match, VP versus Fnatic, and obviously both these teams speak for themselves. This is the new Fnatic / old Fnatic. This is the roster that just dominated for a little bit there. And then VP, they've been together for a bajillion years. They're fucking old as shit, and they're a crazy good roster. So it's a classical matchup, to be honest. They're going to be facing off and this BO3, and the results were a little sad. It was like a 16-9, like pretty okay close game on Mirage, and then a 16-2 stomping on Cobblestone by VP. VP just wrecked them. They plowed through Fnatic with ease, and you got to imagine Fnatic was hoping to win Mirage and go to that map 3, but VP just pulled out a classic plow on Cobble and just pulled it through and ended up making it through with Gambit. Group C is a group of questions for me. All of these teams have question marks surrounding them, and they all have something to prove. SK, for obvious reasons, they just picked up Phelps. Now, Phelps is an insanely good talent out in Brazil, probably one of the best Brazilian players outside of SK right now, and he's coming out of this team to add firepower to an already insane roster of not only firepower but skill. I mean, you've got the 2 best players in the world, Fallen and Coldzera right now. Then you've got Fur and Taco, who are insane role players on their team. And then you're adding Phelps. Phelps, he's just good. He's been playing on Immortals for a while now. This is his time to prove himself. And that's the SK question mark. Because a lot of teams add these crazy good players, but it doesn't end up working out because what looks good on paper doesn't always work out in the server. So that's the question mark surrounding SK. Can Fallen's system bring in additional firepower and still function the same? Then you've got C9, and C9's a team that is constantly surrounded by question marks because they're so inconsistent, it's insane. They had a crazy amount of momentum in 2016, coming off a huge EPL win, being the first North American team to ever win a big 250K tournament. Then you've had some big placings. They looked like they were playing good. They were on points. 2K seemed to be coming into his form as an in-game leader. All the players seemed to kind of naturally fit into their roles. And then all of a sudden, the slump hits. They failed to make the major once again. And now coming into this event, there's roster change talks floating around. The team kind of seems like weird. There's not a lot of like events to go off of. So they're coming into this event pretty, hopefully you would imagine, rested up and ready to play. And so now is their chance to shine. Are they going to do it? Then you've got NIP, and NIP, they're another team that failed to make the major. And NIP, their roster, if you look at their roster, you would never imagine these players would fail to make a major. And it was one of the most depressing losses I think I've ever seen. They got eliminated, they failed to make the major, and now they've been slumping online. People are kind of scared for NIP, right? So this is their event to try and turn things around. What can NIP do on LAN? Let's see them play. Can they pull a VP and win? Then you've got Tyloo, and Tyloo is one of the first Asian teams to come out and really make a big impact in CS. Now, they didn't win any crazy events or, you know, go off and beat SK and win a major or anything like that, but they started to, you know, teams started to really feel their impact. And then all of a sudden they hit a wall. Things didn't go very well. They ended up getting 16-0'd by C9. Then there was huge drama surrounding their roster, players getting banned. It was just like a mess. And so now the question surrounding them is, are they good? Are they not? What's going on with these new players, these stand-ins? They're kind of all over the place. The question is, can they even do anything, right? All right, so let's head into some results. So SK, they breeze through, they 2-0 their group, they win. And that's not too surprising of a victory. A lot of people would have anticipated SK to 2-0 this group, because honestly, they're pretty much the only very, very high caliber team in this group right now. C9 and NIP, they're like floating around like 10th place ish in the world. They're not playing very good right now. Tyloo, they bomb out of their group. Pretty straightforward. They got O2'd, and if you're looking at round differential, they didn't do the worst in the entire event. They beat Complexity by 1 round, if that means anything. So they lose, they get wiped out, and then let's head into the elimination match. The elimination match, C9 versus NIP, the battle of the underperforming teams right now. Both these teams have decent rosters, and you'd imagine that they both have potential in the international stage. So it's a little unfortunate to see them both in an elimination match, but it ended up being a decent enough series. So game 1, C9 just stomps NIP on cobble, 16-2 or 3, I think it was. It was a pretty dominating scoreline. Moving on to Train, map number 2, momentum was on C9's side. And after a 9-6 half, things were looking pretty good. That's a pretty respectable T side for NIP, right? They played pretty good. They won 9 rounds. C9 got a solid 6 rounds on CT side. And obviously on a map like Train, you'd like to see more, but it's a respectable half nonetheless. But then you hit the wall that has been blocking C9 for so very long. It's their T side, and Stewie, he's a fairly new in-game leader. I would say he should be getting things figured out about now, but he's still pretty new. He hits his wall, he can't figure out how to respond to their defense, and they just get smacked. They lose 7 straight rounds, not picking up a single T-side round, and just gift NIP the defensive win on Train. And it's unfortunate, but we're heading in map 3. You'd like to see C9 2-0 NIP with the momentum, but NIP pulls out some of that NIP magic, winning that game. And map 3 ended up being insane. With an opening 8-7 scoreline for half number 1, heading in to CT side, Cloud9, they're looking pretty good, right? This is an insanely close game. They just gotta grind out these last few rounds. This is gonna be a game that comes down to who can just figure out what's going on and grind out the win. And what ended up being the deciding factor in this match is that NIP realized that C9 was playing defensive on B and playing super passive, and they were just abusing C9. They were just play slow, smoke things off, get the free map control, molly them out of position, and just push onto the side. And it ended up grinding them out the win. Ended up being like 16-13. Ended up being a very close game, but in the end, C9 ended up going home, and NIP moved on to the playoffs. So finally, you've got Group D. Group D was Na'Vi, FaZe, Mouse Sports, Renegades. Now, in my eyes, when I look at this group, this is going to be the Na'Vi FaZe show. Mouse Sports, they're dead team. Nico's about to leave after this event. Renegades, they're kind of been a dead team. They're kind of just do whatever off in Australia. They don't do very well internationally. So you would just assume that FaZe, Na'Vi, they're just going to dominate this group. Na'Vi is going to win it. FaZe is going to come in an elimination match, probably against Mouse Sports. And that was going to be the end of it. Well, to my surprise and to most people's surprise, Mouse Sports actually ended up winning this group, going 2-0 with some unreal matches from Nico. One of them, he went like 37 and something, 37 kill map versus Na'Vi to put Na'Vi on the chopping block. It was unreal. Nico just super crazy outperformed himself. Mouse Sports outperformed with Oscar, who is brand new to the team. Nico's about to leave after this event, and they just played and had fun. They didn't really give a shit, and it ended up just working for them. They ended up winning the group and playing crazy. Renegades, as most people had predicted, they go out 0-2 in this group. They get sent home. But the surprising thing about this group is that now FaZe and Na'Vi are facing off in the elimination BO3. Who's going home and who's heading to playoffs? And no one probably expected this. So first map on the elimination BO3 is Mirage, and Na'Vi took Mirage by storm. They ran out of the gates, hitting a 13-2 half and swiftly winning that first map. Just dominated FaZe, and we're heading into map 2 with some good momentum. So map 2 was Nuke, and Nuke for both of these teams is okay. Both teams are willing to float it and play it. And Nuke was actually one of the most, I think it was the most even map at the major, which surprises most people because in history, Nuke has always been so CT sided. And once again, Nuke proves to be ungodly even, ended up being 16-13. FaZe were barely able to squeak out a win. And then now we're heading into map 3 of this BO3. Who's going home? The suspense builds. So here we are, map 3. It went the distance. Final map of the group stage at DreamHack Vegas. Who is finally going to head into the playoffs and finish up the brackets? Na'Vi versus FaZe. They're heading to train, and it was a pretty close half. It was a 9-6 first half, but just something just seemed to click, and Na'Vi dominated FaZe with a 10-2 half to finish up FaZe off. Dominated him, just bodied him on that last half, sent him home. Na'Vi, they are heading into the playoffs, finishing a 2-1 win in their group. And now we're just gonna head into some playoff predictions, talk about who I think is gonna win, get hype. Before I start, I want to say that this playoff bracket has some insane matchups and has some insane potential. Let's not forget that VP versus Astralis rematch is very real in the semis. Don't forget that. First match is going to be SK versus Na'Vi. Both these teams are crazy good on paper and have a good portion of the top 20 players in the world spread across both of their rosters. As hard as the decision that it is, I'm going to go with Na'Vi. And the reason that I think Na'Vi is going to win is, there's a few reasons. Na'Vi's been playing together for longer, regardless of any communication issues that they have. I think that if Na'Vi gets some confidence and has a little momentum going, I think that they have huge potential to just steamroll SK. SK has only had Phelps for a short while, and while Fallen's system even seems to work with stand-ins, Na'Vi has a huge ace up their sleeve, and that's Simple. Simple is the type of player that just has the potential to absolutely dominate a match, and he's been playing very high-level CS for Na'Vi recently, and I think that Na'Vi can do it. Guardian, he's just got to come on. Simple's got to come on. Edward's been playing good. And with Starix leading for now, I think that it loosens up the players and gives them a lot more of a chance to just shine. I think a big thing that Na'Vi has going for them right now is that they're allowed to use Starix as their in-game leader for this event. and that's something they haven't been able to do for a while. And I think that it's something that maybe in the groups hindered them a little bit. You got to imagine Starks is a little bit rusty for in-game leading, and so after a little bit of kind of weird performances, making it into the playoffs, you got to imagine Starks is going to come prepped and ready to roll in this semifinal matchup. So like I said, SK, they just only recently added Phelps, and Navi, they've been playing together for a little bit now, and I think that adding Starks into the equation really gives Navi the ability to find and punch holes in SK's system. Because Phelps is new, there's going to be issues where roles kind of collide, things are going to happen, and that's just natural part of roster changes. Not to mention the fact that when you're adding big firepower to your roster, it can actually cause a lot more problems than it solves. A lot of people think that just adding the best players in a certain country onto one team just instantly makes them good, but that's not always the case, and we've seen that time and time and time again, mostly with French teams, and even with Navi, they've had their issues with this. But I think that SK being so new and Navi just having that little bit of experience as a full team together, I think they're going to be able to find those weaknesses and exploit them. But on the other side, if there is any in-game leader that can pull a roster together like SK's is currently, it would be Fallen. So it's definitely going to be a close match, and I barely give the edge to Navi. Match number 2 is going to be Gambit versus North, and again, this is another series that can go the distance. Gambit, they're like around a 10th best team level in the world. They're not crazy good, but they're pretty good at the same time. But for some reason, they've been playing like 5-4 in the world. They've been playing out of their mind. Adren, Mo, like Hobbit, Zeus, like they've all been playing really, really good under Zeus's leadership. North, they're a team that have always been floating around that 5-4 spot, and they're kind of like adding a new player that gives them some firepower. They were kind of slumping a little bit, so these teams are really even right now, and I think that the fireworks can go off in this series. In my eyes, North is going to win this. It's going to be a close fought battle similar to SK versus Navi, but North adding AZ, I think that AZ is just the firepower that North needed. I think that MSL and Rubino were kind of bringing them down, even though Rubino was a lot of the reason that North even had success at the major. I just think that bringing on AZ, some new young talent onto this team, is the spark that they need. They need that young fire. They're a team that really strives on momentum, and I think that AZ is the perfect fit for them, and I think that they can go off, spark, and do some work against Gambit. I will say this, however, North only recently added AZ, so this is their event to float. If they lose this, you can't really blame them. It's next event that really matters for North. Match number 3, Stralis versus Nip, and unfortunately there's not really much that you can say about this matchup. Nip, they're barely scraping it out in their group against C9, and C9 struggling. Nip should be dominating C9 with their roster, and Astralis, they're coming off a major win. Even so far in this event, they've been playing lights out. So I'm gonna have to go to Astralis on this one. Nip, they're gonna have to pull out some serious Nip magic to even have a chance at this event. All right, the final quarters match is gonna be VP versus Mouse. And again, this is a fairly easy one. I think that VP should be able to just steamroll Mouse. Now, Mouse Sports has shown that they've got some upset potential in the way that they won their group. But the thing is that VP is the type of team that just, the way that they play the game perfectly counters upset type teams. They're able to grind out the close wins that some upset teams can just pull out based on like pure luck and economy. But VP is the type of team that is able to grind out those close games, and when they get rolling, stomp lower level teams. So I think that VP is just going to find the little holes that Mouse Sports has, being a broken team, and just dominate. Okay, so heading into the semis, match number 1 is going to be Navi versus North, and this is a match that again has the potential to go the distance. This is a very, very good matchup, but in my eyes, I see a clear winner in this one, and I'm gonna go with Navi. And the reason that I picked Na'Vi is because Na'Vi is the type of team that counters momentum based teams. If you watched North at the major or any event for that matter, they're a team that just feeds on momentum. They're a team that likes to get loud, yell, scream, get up, like hug each other in the middle of matches. They get really, really into it. And Na'Vi, they're a slow execute based team. And not only that, but they've got some of the most powerful run and gun players in the game. You got Flamey, C's, Simple, plus you've got Guardian, who, even though he's kind of in a slump, he's still a crazy good opper, and you've got Edward just bringing it all together. This is a team that is slow and methodical, and they perfectly counter that momentum-based teamwork. And I think that Na'Vi, they're going to be able to squeak out a win against North. It's going to be a close, hard-fought game, but I think that Na'Vi can win this. Match number 2 in the semis, and I think this is going to be the best game of the entire event. It's going to be VP versus Astralis, and this is a matchup that will most likely happen, so keep that in mind. So this is going to be a rematch of the grand finals of the major. Both these teams, after that major victory by Astralis, there was a little bit of bad blood, you know, so there were some words said on Twitter, and VP, they're out for blood. They're not going to take it easy. They're not going to go slow. VP, they're going to go for full vengeance. And I think that when they're fired up like that, I think that they can beat Astralis. They're a team that they're serious. And when they're mad and they're ready to play, VP are not going to fuck around, and they're going to pull something. They're just that type of team. And I feel like when they're out for blood, there's no stopping the plow. So now we made it to the grand finals. VP versus Na'Vi. This is going to be another crazy series, potentially even the best in the event. Both these teams have an insane potential to plow on T sides. Between Simple, Seized, Edward, like just everyone on Na'Vi, like they're all looking crazy talented players. And then you've got VP, who are famed. They're the Virtus Plow, right? Both these teams are resilient, tactical, and punishing on their T sides. In my eyes, even though it's going to be a really close game, I think Na'Vi is going to win. I feel like in this situation that I outlined, Na'Vi is going to have a lot of confidence going into this grand final, and they're a team that maybe not requires confidence, but they're a team that strives when they have that confidence. VP, I think they potentially are just the pure better team, and they're more experienced team. But I think what VP lacks is that young spark that Na'Vi has. VP makes a lot of their wins based on just pure good old-fashioned teamwork and decent aim and just perfect executes, and a lot of that comes from just playing together for so many years. These are executes they've been practicing together for years, right? Whereas most teams, it comes down to raw skill. And I think what you see a lot of the VP players, they're up and down in their stats, is because they're old. They're not as skilled as they used to be. In fact, the only player that I would even say is consistent right now is Snacks. Na'Vi, on the other hand, they're not only a tactical team, but they're a skilled and young team. And I think that if they catch their stride and they've got that confidence from winning the quarters and the semis, I think that they could do some serious work against VP. Similar to how you saw at New York, Na'Vi, they're not necessarily a team that always plays very well, but once they get that opportunity, I think that they can seize it. And they did the same at New York, and I think that they can do the same here in Vegas. And that's why I think Na'Vi is going to win it. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Hit that subscribe button if you like the video, and like it if you like the video. And check out the social media stuff on the side. Thank you guys so much for watching. It's been your boy Fish. See you on the other side.